Good evening, I'm Grace Brown in Hong Kong and welcome to View TV News. Coming up on tonight's show. The government shows no signs of backing down on the mega Lantau reclamation project, saying it will seek funding as early as next year. The Ombudsman wags her finger at the housing and transport departments for wasting public resources and causing traffic jams. And time to switch to smart ID cards. Residents born between 1985 and 86 will be the first members of the public to get them. First up tonight, the government is once again talking up the massive Lantau reclamation project proposed in the Chief Executive's policy address. Calling it a tried and tested plan, the Development Secretary said he'll seek LegCo's approval for research funding as early as next year. Lydia Sung reports.
Resolute and defensive. The government appears to be moving fast on the Lantau Tomorrow project despite mounting criticism. Speaking on a radio program this morning, Development Chief Michael Wong said officials will ask LegCo for funding approval as early as the beginning of next year to conduct an initial study. That will involve looking into reclaiming 1,000 hectares of land off Khao Yi Chau and another 700 around Hailing Chau. According to Wong, there's ample time to allay Hong Kongers' concerns.
We will explain, we will come up with the facts and information to allow the public to understand better about the rationale of the project.
Wong also snubbed the option of developing brownfield sites and farmland in the new territories. He said reclamation is a tried and tested method to create land in the city, adding it's not appropriate to further burden the new territories where the transport network is already under strain. The Secretary for Environment was asked to weigh in on the issue as well. But Wong Kam Seng seemed to avoid directly answering a reporter's question about whether the artificial islands would be vulnerable to extreme weather.
We have a working group to look after the infrastructures, how to follow the latest global standards and the local situations to set the latest up-to-date standards for all infrastructure, including reclamations.
When pressed on how the reclamation works would affect the area's marine life, the Environment Chief simply said that all projects will have to go through the environmental impact assessment, during which time the public can speak out.
The Environment Chief also spoke on new efforts to tackle the overwhelming amount of plastic waste in the city. Wong Kam Seng hinted he may introduce laws to ban certain single-use plastics. The first step, though, will be taken at government venues. Starting next year, vendors there will no longer be allowed to hand out plastic straws and polystyrene lunchboxes. Plastic cutlery will gradually be cut down as well. Wong said his team will work with eateries and see how these measures go before deciding what laws are needed. Top Beijing official Zhang Xiaoming has backed the SAR government's decision not to renew the work visa of Financial Times editor Victor Mallet. That's according to a delegation of Hong Kong media executives who are in the capital for a 3-day visit. Singtao News CEO Siu Sai-wo also quoted Zhang as saying it's no big deal for Beijing to remind Hong Kong not to be turned into a base for foreign interference. That reminder came from the Communist Party propaganda chief, though Siu had on Tuesday told reporters that officials said Hong Kong media specifically. He later retracted that statement and is now under pressure to explain why he changed his words. To the LegCo by-election, electoral officials have confirmed tonight former lawmaker Lee Cheuk-yen is in the running for the Kowloon West seat. Lee applied last Friday as a backup option for the Pan Democrats. Their top choice, Lau Siu-lai, was disqualified. Frederick Fung and Rebecca Chan are already confirmed candidates, while 2 others are still awaiting confirmation. The Ombudsman has hit out at the Housing Department for wasting precious public resources after finding nearly 40% of public housing storerooms unused. In its latest report, it found about 1,000 out of some 2,400 storerooms across the city's public housing estates had been left idle. These spaces, which vary in size, are currently only rented to tenants. Ombudsman Connie Lau said the department has agreed to explore different options for these spaces, such as turning them into flats or renting units that don't meet housing requirements to non-profit groups.
Today, we know that at least there will be 74 storerooms that could be converted into residential unit. And of course, as you know, some storerooms are smaller, so maybe they would combine into one. But we are happy to note that they would turn this into a policy.
The Ombudsman also looked into complaints about a Lantau link traffic gridlock in August last year. It found the Transport Department was to blame for making poor arrangements when it switched from a one-way toll collection to a two-way system. Connie Lau said the change was justified to accommodate the coming Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge. But an obvious lack of well-thought-out plan for any contingency situation caused 10-kilometre-long traffic queues on the first working day after the change. She recommended the department step up staff training on strategic planning and contingency moves. The Council for Social Service is urging the government to give carers of senior citizens more support. That's as its latest survey found many of them under heavy pressure and even depressed. Together with HKU researchers, the Council spoke with more than 1,100 caregivers and found a quarter of them were under immense pressure and showed signs of depression. The survey also found more than a third of the respondents were aged 75 or above themselves. The Council voiced worries about these high-risk carers and said they need more emotional support as well as financial aid. Well, it's time for new smart identity cards, and top officials, public servants and lawmakers will be the first to get them at the end of this year. The government today unveiled details for the switch, which involves 8.8 million cards and is expected to take 4 years to complete. Residents born between 1985 and 1986 will be the first members of the public to get the cards, which use contactless technology. They can begin to apply for them at one of 9 replacement centres starting January 21st. A former police superintendent was given 28 months in jail today for taking bribes from the operators of 2 Wan Chai private clubs. Wai Hon, along with the 2 operators, were taken to district court for sentencing this morning in a correctional services vehicle. Deputy District Judge Lee Chi-ho criticized for abusing his senior position, giving away confidential police investigation details for a large sum of bribes, more than $570,000. Calling the case serious, the judge said jail terms were a must. The 2 club operators, meanwhile, were given between 12 and 20 months in prison. Moving on to business news now. It was a pretty gloomy session here in Asia after Wall Street closed lower and the Federal Reserve hinted at more rate hikes. The Hang Seng ended the day almost flat at 25,454 points. Chinese energy firms Sinopec and China Shenhua led the losses after oil prices slipped. Even more bearish on the mainland, with oil stocks also falling there. The Shanghai Composite saw a sell-off, closing down nearly 3% at 2,486 points. Investors also watching closely on rising trade and currency tensions between the US and China. The Trump administration has decided not to label China a currency manipulator, despite the recent fall of the yuan. In its latest report, the U.S. Treasury Department found Beijing doing little to directly intervene in the currency's value, but it added the lack of transparency and recent weaknesses were concerning. In the past 6 months, the yuan has fallen by more than 9% against the U.S. dollar, and there are growing fears it may drop to the key 7 against the greenback threshold, a level not seen since 2008. Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry expressed regret today over Washington's decision to pull the U.S. out of the Universal Postal Union. American officials say the pact gives China an unfair advantage as it allows cheap shipments of small packages to the States. But exiting the deal could hurt online shoppers in the U.S. who've been able to gain access to foreign goods at low costs. After data breach and privacy scandals at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg's position is under scrutiny. 4 major investors in the social media company have now called for him to be removed as chairman. Gavino Gare has the latest.
After a number of high-profile scandals, several large public funds that hold shares in Facebook are joining calls for CEO Mark Zuckerberg to be removed as company chairman. In April, Zuckerberg was defending his company on Capitol Hill against accusations of spreading fake news during the 2016 presidential election and mishandling personal data.
I'm committed to getting this right. This includes the basic responsibility of protecting people's information, which we failed to do with Cambridge Analytica.
That failure and other controversies have triggered calls for Zuckerberg to be replaced. Now, several public funds that hold shares in Facebook in a proposal called for him to be removed as chairman. The proposal calls on Facebook's board to make the role of board chair an independent position. Zuckerberg has about 60% voting power. The proposal is set to be voted on at the company's annual shareholder meeting in May 2019.
Meanwhile, Apple is seeking to reassure its customers about data privacy. The tech giant has rolled out an online tool in the US and several other countries, allowing users to download, change, or delete all data collected on them. Tamara Lindstrom has the story.
Apple on Wednesday gave users a new online tool to download all the data that exists not on their iPhones, but on the company's servers, which Apple says isn't very much. And Reuters technology correspondent Stephen Nellis says that's the point.
Apple is saying, hey, first off, we don't collect a lot of information. It actually lives on your device, and we can't see it because we don't have your passcode. But then they're saying, but the information we do collect, we try to keep private. Here's how you can view it.
Apple's privacy portal is a new take on an old feature, allowing users to request their private data, verify their identity, and download the information all in one place. The tool was already available in Europe, and by the end of the year, Apple users worldwide will have access to it. The move partly a response to new European privacy laws, but also an effort to set the company apart.
They're more broadly trying to position the company and its privacy stance as a sort of competitive differentiator between it and its rivals. They're saying, hey, if you care about privacy, we want you to spend money on Apple devices rather than devices from other companies.
With Google and Facebook moving into the device market Apple has dominated, the company is eager to point out it won't sell your data when its competitors do.
They cannot say enough that they don't sell your data. That's what they're trying to do by putting this website out there and letting people know about it. And it's up to consumers to decide whether Apple's privacy promises are good enough.
Time for a break now, but coming up, hitting the campaign trail in Afghanistan, a record number of female candidates are vying for seats in parliament despite risks to their lives.